This is the Career Planning Show, hosted by Employment Services Advisor Alex Rashkanu.
Andrew Berry is a data science educator at Lighthouse Labs. He's passionate about all things data and artificial intelligence. He's also the host of the Pandemic Job Hunt podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping professionals find the keys to success in landing a job during the pandemic. Connect with Andrew Berry on LinkedIn and GitHub, and check out his Pandemic Job Hunt podcast at pandemicjobhunt.com. Andrew shared his journey of becoming a data science educator, discussed the importance of taking the time to reflect on where you want your career to go, as well as how to show that you are passionate about the job you're applying for, and shared some of the productivity and data science related tools he uses. Enjoy listening to Andrew Berry's career journey and his career development insights. Andrew, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks a lot for making the time to be with us. Andrew, can you start with walking us through your career journey so far?
Sure. Let me just wind it back to the beginning of university. I was 18 years old. I landed in Canada, fresh off the plane, and 1 week later, I started my university classes. And the university I went to was McGill University, which is in Montreal. And in my undergrad career, I probably switched majors like 3-4 times. I remember I landed at McGill thinking I would love to do international business, but however, after 6 or 7 months of it, I realized, this is not for me. So let me just switch to another major, and in that case, finance. And after 3-4 months of doing that and taking some finance courses, I realized I didn't like finance, and let me switch to something else, information systems. And after 3 to 4 months of that, I realized, okay, maybe this is something I prefer over my other subject matters. However, I also taken on some credits from the other classes. So I decided, I'm going to have much more of a general approach and try to have, take a bunch of minors and eventually finish with a major information systems. But that was like a 2-year process of really taking a bunch of electives, trying out different courses to really figure out what I really wanted to study, what I really wanted to do. Because I think when I was applying for university, when I was like 17 years old, I didn't really know what I really wanted to do. I just applied to things that just made sense to me or was just intrinsic at the moment. But I didn't do too much research. And I think that's like a problem generally is in high school, society puts so much pressure for like these young kids from 16 to 17 to apply for university and pick a major, and you think that's going to be what you're going to do for the rest of your life. That is not true. And I think society needs to do a better job at highlighting the differences or different career paths there are, because in reality, there is so many career paths, and there's many career paths that's not told in the traditional way. People having, working using social media now to really enhance their career as an example. However, through university, I studied undergrad with information systems, which is a major within the commerce degree. So I graduated with a BCom. After 4 years of working and pursuing my degree, I graduated university without really an idea where I wanted to go. I wasn't too sure what jobs I want to take. Because again, I was still a bit confused what I really wanted to do. I was unsure if the BCom degree was right for me, but I knew that I was really into fashion at the time, and I was really into technology at that time. And I decided to help out a friend with his own fashion startup and try to like dabble my hands into that and just to get myself a little busy. However, I think when I was in that role or like just helping him out, I was also figuring myself out at the same time. And I always knew that I liked tech, and I always knew I was interested in data, because in university I took 1 or 2 classes that were programming and one or two classes that were involved in data analytics. And I think that was fascinating to me, that in the world of big data, how do you really manipulate data? How do you work with like large data? How do you get insights from data? And I knew there must be more technologies that work with big data than just Excel and Google Sheets, which is traditionally what people use in many companies, and especially in undergrad degrees, that's what they teach you.
Yeah.
So I knew that I wanted to figure out a way to be in tech, but I had a business degree. What's the next best option? I did not want to be like a software engineer, a software developer building stuff from scratch. What is that perfect intersection between technology and business? And
Hmm.
that's where I found data science. I thought data science was the perfect intersection because within data science, you do need to know coding abilities such as Python and SQL and the basics of it, but you don't need to know that much. You don't have to be an expert or a pro. You just need to know enough to get around manipulating data and doing transformations with data.
Hmm.
And I thought that was the tech side, but then the business side of it is actually understanding your domain, understanding the business problem, understanding what the data tells you. That's more of the subjective side of data science, which I thought was intriguing. And I think it was just a perfect intersection because data science, at the end of the day, is applying statistics to large data sets, and there's computers that will help you churn out complicated calculations that we humans can't do by hand. That's why this field is data science. It's the intersection between computer science and business, or I guess statistics. And that's the art of data science. And once I realized that, I enrolled myself into a data science bootcamp. So I enrolled in a data science bootcamp in Toronto in early of 2019. I think 2019 March or 2019 April is when I started. Um, and I did a 3 month full time boot camp learning the foundation of data science. It was very intensive. It was you were studying from 9 to 9 every day. Your weekends are just constantly busy because you just have to catch up on work or doing homework assignments. Because essentially, what these boot camps trying to achieve is squishing a 1 year data science master's into 3 months, and you're going over so many topics so quickly that you need to spend time after class to review your content. And it's very intense. But I'm so grateful for going through that boot camp because without it, I wouldn't be where I am today as a
Yes.
data science instructor. After the boot camp, I graduated. I dabbled in freelance for a little bit for data analytics. I took on some projects, just doing some basic analytics of looking at some spreadsheets, data, and see if I can make some transformations, see if I can make some provide some insights to the various clients I had. However, a short while after I graduated, BrainStation called me up and be like, "Hey, do you want to?" BrainStation is the school I went to, by the
Yes.
way. They called me up and asked, "Hey, do you want to be a TA for the data science cohort?" So basically, being on the other side
Hmm.
of the bootcamp experience, I was a student, and
Yeah.
now I'm on the other side. I'm actually an educator. I'm actually delivering the content, delivering the product, and it was very interesting to see how it worked behind the scenes. And I was just so intrigued by, I guess, how my boss at that time referred to as how the sausage is made.
Yes.
And when I learned how the sausage was made, I think I realized I had a passion in this because I had so many qualms in terms of what I think should have been done or what I think should be improved. Because when you are a student, you experience it in a different way compared
Yes.
to when you're an educator. And when you're an educator, when you're not a student, you experience a different way. So I think I tapped into my experience as a student in the
That very fresh
boot camp,
experience.
a fresh experience, and I tried to apply that to the boot camp by figuring out ways to improve the course, working as a team to figure out a way to improve the user experience of the students.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, these boot camps will succeed if the student has a great user experience and they are able to learn as best as possible. Because these boot camps at the end of the day also are targeting mostly non-technical folk.
Yes.
They focus on people who are some sort in a they have a career already, maybe 5 to 10 years of experience, and they're looking to transition into a more technical role. That's what these boot camps are great for. It's for those folks who wants to transition. So these folks in general are not technical by nature. They might be, but not as like a technical compared to someone who's a software developer. So you have to figure out a product that it caters to this non-technical audience and slowly ramp them up to be much more technical after 3 months. And I think that is such a hard challenge that most boot camps in Canada are trying to solve.
Yes.
However, after 2 months, not 2 months, after two cohorts at Brain Station, when I was a TA, I decided it was time to go and time to look for other opportunities because I thought I started my Brain Station career as a student, I think March, April of 2019, and I left around March, April 2020. So it was like a 1 year thing. I thought it was poetic. It was time to leave after 1 year within this system. But at that time I left, it was the peak of the pandemic. And
The
I
best time to
remember
look for a job.
the best time to look for a job, but I already made up my mind like before this whole pandemic started going. And I think at that time no one really knew if how bad it was going to be or how big
Yes.
it was the outbreak. So looking back at that decision, I don't know if it's the best decision, but it did lead me to where I am today. So after the pandemic, after when the pandemic hit and I left the job, um, I spent a few months just figuring out what I wanted to do next steps by honing my skills, starting a podcast, refining my work, building on my portfolio, my data science portfolio, because in data science, especially those coming from boot camps, it's so important to have a data science portfolio. And I was just, again, just making sure. I was also writing tutorials and building educational content regarding data science. So I was still teaching in a way, or like refining my educator skills in the realm of data science. And shortly after that, at the end of the summer of 2020, I interviewed at another boot camp called Lighthouse Labs, and they onboarded me on September, and I've been working with them ever since. And now I'm an instructor at Lighthouse Labs. I've taught a public boot camp. What I mean by the public boot camp is the boot camp that you usually see on when you go on the website, the public for the public, and then there's the private boot camp, which is what the corporations might go to Lighthouse Labs and ask them for a custom course or corporate course. So I taught the public boot camp, I taught the private boot camp, and they gave me great opportunities such as working on the 21-day data challenge, which was a big marketing push on Lighthouse Labs' part to get people aware of their data science program. And it was great because I had a lot of ownership. And I realized as I get through with this, I'm becoming really passionate about just education in general, because I think it's like these companies such as Lighthouse Labs or those in this bootcamp space where they're focused on upskilling folks.
Yes.
I think these are great products in the market because someone doesn't have to spend a year or go through the process of applying for a university to get these skills. They can find a shorter course that does just an equal amount of good job to actually upskill in this way. At least in Canada, these schools, such as Lighthouse, such as Brain Station, they're regulated by the government.
Yes.
So there is actual regulations that make sure the standard of quality is very high.
Because they're registered as private colleges. So
they're registered as private colleges. I am not too sure if this is true in the United States, where the regulations are up to par as Canada, but at least in Canada, you can rest assured that the government does check that these schools are legit, and then these schools are legit because there's folks who have gone through this program and are able to upskill or transition to the role or the field that they actually studied for. And
that's right.
And I'm very proud of that, and I really love the journey I see from a student who entered the boot camp day one and they finish in the end of after 3 months, and then you look at their journey and you're like, wow, they've learned so much in such a short time. They were able to upskill, and partly due to like what you put into the boot camp, how you interacted with students, how you taught the program. But every time you teach the program, every time you do a class, every time you're interacting with students, you're always figuring out better ways to convey the content. And I think as I am in this position and as I work on this and the more experience I get, you'll realize what works and what doesn't work, because it is also a challenge too. It's a challenge to design a lesson to like teach. It's a challenge to sometimes speak for 2 hours. It's a challenge at times to figure out how to break down complex technical stuff and breaking it down into layman terms or simplified terms. And there's one thing I've always said to myself, and I always said to all my students when they're learning concepts, and something I try to embody, is always figure out a way to break down complex ideas into
Hmm.
simple terms.
Hmm.
Uh, because I believe at the end of the day, data science is super accessible. Anyone can learn it if they put their minds to it.
Hmm.
And the challenging part is how do you break down these complex data science terms into non-technical folk, or like how do you break it down to simple ways so you can actually convey the knowledge to the other party. And I think it's a sign of a great educator if they can break it down to simple terms and not use too much jargon to convey a topic. uh, so that's something I have in the back of my mind as I am in this role, is how do I figure out how to uh, make it easier for my students so they don't have to spend too much time questioning themselves or spend too much time trying to study it on their own. That's what they
Mhm.
paid for. They paid for a product, and as an educator, your job is to figure out the best way to convey the knowledge to them so that when they finish the boot camp, they can go on and succeed in their whatever role that they land in the field that they study.
That's right. And just to build on your reflection on what it means to be a data science instructor, what would you say that are some of the key areas in your role that you spend a lot of time focusing? Obviously, there's a significant portion of your time that ends up spent in teaching environment, right? I remember
Yeah.
you mentioning that it might be that you're going to have a 2-hour block, later today where you're going to be teaching live to students. But what are some of the other components in terms of preparation, in terms of identifying new opportunities to further improve the learning experience for students? How do you allocate your time, and how would you identify those
uh,
key areas within your role?
that's a great question. um, when it comes to teaching lectures, I think the act of teaching itself, or delivering the content, that is not the hardest part. Because at that when you reach that point, you should already know what you're teaching. It's challenging if it's the first time you're teaching content and you don't know if this method works or not. And every time you teach a new content for the first time, you go back and reflect and figure out, how can I improve this? How do I tweak this? How do I improve the delivery? But after 10 or 20 lectures that you do, it becomes second nature, to be honest, just delivering content. But the hard part at the end of the day is preparing the content, preparing the lecture, preparing the lesson slides, preparing the exercises. Um, because at Lighthouse Labs, a lot of that work is self work. You have to prepare it on your own, and you have to figure out the best method to deliver the content, because we have what we call instructor freedom in this case. So preparing the content takes a long time. It can take anywhere from like 2 hours to like 8 hours at times of just figuring out the best way to deliver the content. But also I think part of it is I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I was a student at a boot camp, so I kind of have an idea what works and what doesn't work, that I think, at least on my own, like what I believe in.
Yes.
And I'm always want to make sure that when I deliver a some sort of lecture, I
Mm.
want to make sure that at the end of it, most people don't have that many questions, because I covered all the bases. That's kind of like my benchmark is,
Mm.
can I cover all the bases in the most accessible and easy way? But on top of that, preparing takes a lot of time, but just also after lectures, these students are working their content. They're studying, or they're figuring things out, and they're refining their skills with like assignments and whatnot. We're also available to them, and there are many times you'd have one-on-ones with students, and these one-on-ones, you try to encourage them. You try to like break down complex topics into simple terms again. You mentor them into to be better data scientists. These take a lot of time as well, just these one-on-one interactions.
Hmm.
But I think these are the most this is the most important part of the user experience, is this one-on-one interaction between an instructor and a student, because these one-on-one uh, interactions can really set them up for success.
Yes.
They feel more reassured that they're learning. They feel more reassured that they paid this much money for this boot camp and they're getting much value out of it. So the more one-on-one attention you can have with the student, the better their performance gonna be, and the more confident they will be at the end of the boot camp when they leave. So I try to have as much one-on-one interactions as possible.
Hmm.
But I would say that's teaching aside, and I've also done work at Lighthouse Labs regarding just working on like a curriculum, such as a 21-day data challenge that you entered, which was 21 days of data analytical challenges, and I do work regarding to that. And there's also some work that I really can't say right now that I'm doing, but the public facing side is I do I work on education, and I prepare content, I deliver the content, I do one-on-one. But at the back of my mind, every time I do work on this, I'm always thinking, how can I improve this the next time?
That's great.
What
So
part
about
of
the student experience.
what part of the program is weak? What part of the program is strong? That's something I'm constantly thinking, and that's something that I have in the back of my mind. So the next time a new cohort comes around, I will, try to address what I think were or shortcomings, or address what I think did well, so we don't repeat the same mistakes. And I
Mhm.
think that's what I like about at least with Lighthouse Labs and this boot camp, and I think it's true for most boot camps, is you have a course this time, but the next version of course is never the same. It's this constant iterative improvements that we do to the course, and as educators we try to be aware of, that makes the course so good. So I can say like the course today is going to be better than the course 1 year ago, and I'm sure the course in the next year will be better than the course
Hmm.
today, because they're constantly figuring out what works and what doesn't work. We take an account of lessons learned, etc., etc. So that is for all educators, figuring out in the back of their head, like, what can we do to improve this product?
Hmm. And building on this train of thought, would you say that there is one aspect of your role as a data science instructor that you find most fulfilling? And on the flip side, is there one aspect of your role that you find most difficult?
uh Most fulfilling, honestly, is when seeing a cohort finish their program, when I see a bunch of students, at the end, they're just wrapping up their last project, their last capstone, and they're finishing off, and just seeing their work that was built upon 3 months of studying
Hmm.
is quite rewarding, just to see that they become so knowledgeable about a subject in 3 months. Is great. It really
Hmm.
validates your role and validates the work you do. Just seeing them graduate and actually enter the field, or at least have the foundation of data science you gave them, and that's always so rewarding at the end of each program. It's always bittersweet because you build rapport with these students. You interact with them almost every day, so it kind of feels like a family at times, and then it's kind of sad at times that towards the end they go off and you don't interact with them as much. But a new cohort will come by and replace the whole thing, and it's also exciting when the new cohort starts because they're so eager, they don't know much. And I think that just witnessing the student's journey is so rewarding. But the challenging aspect is, I think, end of the day, is just preparing the content and figuring out the content. That's always going to be a challenge,
Hmm.
and it's a challenge because if you're a perfectionist, or your business, like, what is good enough? That's the hard thing to gauge. Like, what is the goalpost where you come to conclusion this is good enough? Where in reality, there's always things you can improve. There's always many things you can improve, but in the day, there's a lack of resources, there's a lack of time. You got to understand what you should prioritize, uh, and that's always challenging, is like selecting what you should improve on and
Hmm.
figuring out what to improve the next round you deliver a content lecture or whatnot.
Hmm. Speaking of content, last summer you launched the monthly podcast, The Pandemic Job Hunt. Are there any ideas that stood out to you that were shared by some of your guests when it comes to career development? Or is there a particular episode that really stands out in your mind that you think that our listeners should take a look at and I can link to in the notes?
Yeah, I think the pandemic job hunt has been a very interesting podcast. Just understanding how these various guests, approached this job hunting. But I think what's most interesting was episode 3. I had a guest. His name is Rohan Seth,
Mm-hmm.
and he works at this hotel company, a startup actually, and he has some very candid views of the job hunting process, and I think views that a lot of recruiters or bigger companies may not admit, and I think this maybe could have been unspoken truth, but I could be wrong. But I really liked about that episode was he was very straightforward to the fact that in this pandemic times, you see a job posting online, you apply for it. Many times they're not going to look at that because when a company posts a job, especially these smaller companies, they might get 500 to 1,000 inbound applications from whatever job site they post, and these folks, they're busy, they can't look at every single resume.
That's right.
So what they do sometimes is they just look at the folks who actually reached out to them either through email or through LinkedIn, and they don't interview those people because those people took the initiative to actually reach out. And I think this is true across every industry and every opportunity that I've got. If you don't take initiative, uh, by not just applying but reaching out and networking, you're very unlikely for you to get a call back or not, because especially in these days where competition is so high, a lot of people are still unemployed. We're just not at that level of pre-COVID employment status. So every job out there is still a lot of applications, and you have to figure out a way to stand out. And I think the best way to stand out is through networking and really trying to make a connection, because we're all humans. We crave connections, and in order to do business, you want to make a touch point. You convey your human. If not, you're just a resume on the screen. You're just a name on the screen. If you add a personal touch to it, either through networking or getting someone to connect you with someone and talking to them, they're going to keep you in the back of your head. And then when they see a resume, they know, hey, I've seen you before. You reached out to me. I'm going to talk to you and see if we can find out. And I loved his candid approach about that. And I think this is very true for smaller companies, startups, smaller companies who do not have full-fledged, HR teams or a full-fledged recruiting team. They are just, either 1 or 2 employees who are working in recruitment, or they're just hiring managers for a different team, just trying to recruit for their own team. Bigger companies, upward 20,000 plus, maybe a different story, but I think this is a bit true for smaller companies is uh, don't just apply. If you apply, your application is going nowhere. You have to think outside the box to get your application in. And the best way is to really network with others. And also, not just that, work on your personal brand. Work on your personal brand on LinkedIn, start posting, start showing that you're still honing your craft. For example, if you're a data scientist and you're not having a job, make sure you're still active, such as participating in hackathons, such as building on your portfolio, or like, write an article discussing an idea in data science. Showing that you're a thought leader and you're constantly contributing and thinking in this field, I think really adds to your credibility when someone looks at your profile, that this person is active. They're not just applying to get a job. They're actually passionate about it. And end of the day, we're all humans. We want to be surrounded by folks who are passionate, who are interested in their field. So to show that, one of the best ways in today's world is by being active on social media, professional social media. So that's LinkedIn and possibly Twitter.
That's so valuable and so spot on with how I'm thinking about it. I do remember listening to the episode and I found it spot on. I remember some time ago applying for work in London, England, and interviewing for a role. And later I found out there was another person who was interviewing for that role that was doing the same job in another country for the same company. And somehow me, an outsider, managed to get in without having the full skill set. And the way I did it is because I knew I really, really wanted the job. And I started blogging on my website. So about the particular area. So it was global market research in the area of chocolate. So I ended up doing global market research in the area of chocolate because I ended up blogging about it. So I had about 3 blog posts. By the time they looked at my application, and I made sure I featured my my website very prominently on the resume, I ended up getting the role because they saw how passionate I was, and I was doing research about it. Whereas the other person, it was a job for them, but for me, it was something that I was really interested in. And the same way when you're applying for a role, if it's posted on LinkedIn and it's posted on Indeed and on the company website, I literally apply in all 3 places because it makes it more likely that they find you. And then if there's the name of a person mentioned, go on LinkedIn, try to connect with them, maybe by liking some of their things. Find them on Twitter. I follow them on Twitter. I make sure I email them. If I find the name of the recruiter on the file and the name of the manager, I message both of them. Like, if you really want a job,
you gotta show it.
Really go after it.
You gotta show it.
Don't play around because somebody else is gonna be after that job, and because they're showing a lot more passion and energy, they're gonna be the ones getting it. But you can be the most passionate about it, and be able to secure that role.
I agree. I like that story. I like the fact that you blogged, because that shows that you did some research, some domain research, and on their end, they're like, oh, this person already knows a little bit about the industry, a little bit about the domain, that we don't have to spend that much time onboarding them.
That's right.
So on their end, like, this is a perfect candidate. But yeah, you have to really show that you're interested. And one way to do that is just write like a short cover letter. And when it comes to cover letter writing, you don't have to write a lot. Just say, I'm interested in this. You can check out my resume. But the fact that you filled in the cover letter form shows that, oh, this person is even more interested in. And many times, I don't think they even look at your cover letters. They just see that you've done it. And that's like another step of validating the fact that you're interesting. But then again, I also think you should, because like looking for a job is so time consuming in general. I always suggest to like find a few companies that you can spend a lot of energy applying versus just shoot it all, just apply to say 60 companies in like one day. Just pick your battles and pick the ones that you really want to do it, so you can have a more energy in a specific application. Because if you have a quality application, it's most likely for them that they'll pick you up versus just a shotgun approach of applying to like a bunch of companies in a short amount of time. Because each application is not of high quality, it's just quantity. So quality over quantity is my recommendation as well.
That's great. Yeah. So maybe having your hit list of 10 dream employers and really going hard after those. And if you have time, you can sprinkle applications on other employers as well. But that's a really great train of thought.
And even if you get rejected, you had an interview with them, still connect with them on LinkedIn. Be like, hey, I had a good interview. I really enjoyed the process. I really liked your style. I know I didn't get the job, but I would love to stay connected because you never know.
Yeah, this is so insightful and valuable, and it's interesting because both of us run podcasts in the area of career development, so we get to hear really insightful trains of thoughts from some of the individuals that we're interacting with. If we can switch over to your motto, which I find fascinating, being comfortable and resilient in the face of uncertainty. Now, how applicable is that during a pandemic? Can you share a little bit about your motto and how one might leverage it in their career development process?
Yeah, I'm not too sure when I put that on my bio, being comfortable and resilient in the face of uncertainty. I don't know if I put that in the middle of the pandemic or I put that sometime before the pandemic, but I've seen that motto for some time now, and I think I've probably seen it in like a book about stoicism. where such as one big book is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
Mhm.
It's a really good book in terms of understanding the Stoic mind way and the Stoic philosophy. But I think this quote is very important because in life we face a lot of uncertainty. There's so much that is up in the air all the time. And it's especially true for folks, I think, who are early on in their careers, who are especially university students who don't know what they're getting themselves into, don't know what they want to do, or they graduated, they have a job, or they don't have a job. There's so much uncertainty in terms of what is the path forward. And I think when you're uncertain and you're not comfortable in it, or you're stressed out about it, it really clouds your judgment, it really clouds your energy, and really clouds your decision making. And I think it's important to always understand that you're okay, things will always work out, and being comfortable in uncertainty means you're aware that you're in an uncertain period of time, you're aware of that, but stop worrying about that. Focus on what you can do to get yourself out of a position of uncertainty and put yourself in a position where you have a bit more certain. And I think it has to do a bit more of not being succumbed to the stress of it or the worry of in the uncertain period of time or a stressful period, and just focus on the action of doing. So it's a very stoic way of just, you're aware of it, but I won't let that get to me, and let me actually figure out a way to get myself in a more
Hmm.
comfortable position. So that's where it's coming from, like being
Hmm.
comfortable and resilient in the face of uncertainty. And this was very true for me after I left BrainStation in the middle of the pandemic. There's a period of my life where it was super uncertain. I did not know what I wanted to do. I did not know what the next step. I wasn't too sure if data science was the right path for me or education was the right path for me. I really liked it, but I wasn't, obviously, I'm not sure because I wasn't in it. But in that period, I realized, okay, I'm not gonna let the stress get to me. Let me just figure out my next steps and focus on like building my resume, building my portfolio, try on some side projects. And in that period, I started my podcast. I started another podcast called the Little Big Ideas Show. And if I didn't start that podcast, I would have never done the Pandemic Job Hunt podcast,
Hmm.
because that podcast, my first podcast for me, started my ability to understand how the podcasting world works. So starting a second podcast was much easier. And the second podcast, the fact that I'm interviewing people has benefited me so much, because now my ability to speak has been it's so much better than it was before a pandemic, because especially in the role I am now, where I'm instructing all the time, I'm in a position of authority, I'm explaining things, I have to speak things in an eloquent and articulate way. the 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 podcast has really helped me with that as well.
Hmm.
So things generally work out, but it's important to be comfortable and resilient in the face of uncertainty. And you should choose to do something versus choosing to be worried and just stay at home and watch Netflix. Choose to do something to put yourself in a better place, even if you don't have a job right now. Working your portfolio is better than nothing, because that is noticed. And I think it's true with your example. When you apply for a job, you blogged about that industry. You didn't have a job at the time, but the fact that you're passionate about that, it pays off. It pays off in dividends down the line that you might not know of or might not realize in the short term.
That's right. In terms of resources that you think someone should take a look at, your podcast, right? The
Mhm.
Pandemic Job Hunt. I'm going to mention the book Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
Mhm.
The need to look at examples of portfolios and developing your own. Is there one other resource that we haven't touched on that you think is worth
Mhm.
checking out for someone who is looking for a job right now?
Um, I can maybe tone this down for like the data science
Yes.
field. I think that's a little bit more applicable, and I think I can speak on that. Um, if you're a data professional and you want to get into data science or data analytics, uh, you should always constantly refine your skills. So there are tons of resources such as LeetCode or HackerRank that focus on your technical skills, but also look up at GitHub. GitHub has tons of resources, and tons of people put their portfolios in there. use GitHub as an inspiration for you to figure out the type of portfolio you want to create. That's speaking for just data science in general. But second, after that is learn how to manage your time properly, and I think that is really important, because if you work on something a lot, you'll get burnt out, and getting burnt out, I've been there before, sucks, because you want to spend 5 days recovering and doing nothing. So make sure you balance your time and be mindful of the amount of energy you can spend in a single day, because everyone has a point where their brain will just not work. You can't study past midnight, or else you can try, but you're not really absorbing it. So maybe you should sleep. So prioritize sleep. Make sure you have a routine, be organized. And also, if you can fit in exercise, that's great, because some exercise, even 15 or 20 minutes, or even going for a short walk, is better than nothing. So I recommend, if you're a job seeker, make sure you have a routine. And that routine involves staying fit, staying healthy, eating correctly, and being mindful that you may only have maybe 6 to 8 hours of really intense focus time. And I think, at least for me, I think I can only give 6 to 8 hours of really good focus, quality energy in terms of productivity, and then the rest of that, it's not as productivity, or not as productive. It's less productive. I can still get work done, but I think there's only 6 hours of quality hours a day for me. So if you're mindful of that, and you figure out how your energy works throughout the day, you can be really productive, and that requires being organized. And for me, how I organize is I use Notion as a software to just organize my thoughts, and I use I think TickTick is another like to-do list that I also do use as well to manage, I guess, my my work and what I need to do. And one thing I do to keep myself at least sane is I spend a lot of time journaling and reflecting. I always have a book next to me, or on my bedside. It's called my daily journal, or my daily book. It's just a book where I have a pen and I just capture any thought. It's just like a place to unload anything on my brain. I always have that on pen and paper, just to write down any thoughts. It could be a diary entry, it could be a to-do list, it could be like just if I'm reading something, I'm just taking some notes. It's just a book that catches my thoughts. And I think it's also important to be reflective. Every month, I always do this as well. At the beginning of the month, I reflect on the previous month, as in terms of like, did I achieve my goals? Did I achieve what I wanted to do? And then I also plan my next month. So for me, in order to be productive and be focused, I have to spend a lot of time reflecting. I think that's something a lot of folks don't do, is they don't reflect enough. And you can reflect on your personal life, but you can also reflect on your professional life and the goals and what you want to achieve. So I highly recommend doing these monthly reflections, and that's something I'm a big believer in. I tell all my peers and friends that you should do that as well if you are trying to like achieve something.
Andrew, thank you so much. This has been so insightful. Andrew, what's next for you?
What's next for me? Well, right now I'm an educator at Lighthouse Labs. I'm still very passionate about education, and I'm really passionate about interviewing people for my pandemic job hunt. So right now I'm focused on my work, my pandemic job hunts podcast, and I'm also just focused on just trying to be healthy and enjoy life, especially now the summer is coming back. The gloom of winter is gone, and so spring is here. So I just want to enjoy summer and enjoy life. But also, in terms of personal projects, one thing I want to achieve this year is I want to build my own course and release my own course online. Not necessarily regarding to data science, but maybe a subset of data science. And that's something I want to, has been a goal of mine, is to develop a course from scratch, end to end, that I can just brand as my own.
That sounds great. It's a great idea. You should definitely do it. Thank you so much for your time, Andrew. I really appreciate having you on the Career Planning Show.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
We record the Career Planning Show in the podcast booth inside the Staples Studio co-working space located in Midtown Toronto, Canada. Staples Studio not only offers a safe space to work with desks, offices, private phone booths, and meeting rooms, they are also connected to the Staples store, where they have everything you need under one roof. With locations across Canada, Staples Studio is a community to help you work, learn, and grow. To learn about their co-working space locations, pricing, and amenities, visit studio.staples.ca and book a virtual tour.
If you like what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe and share the Career Planning Show with a friend. For more resources and to ask your career development questions, visit rascanu.com/The Career Planning Show.